Full time here at the Gaelic grounds in Limerick in the Munster Championship, where it has finished Limerick 321, Tipperary 23 points. Paddy Stapleton, All Ireland winner with Tipperary, was watching the game for Off the Ball. Paddy, your thoughts on today's game?
Yeah, I think Limerick would look at the first half and say they found things a little bit difficult. Tipperary were getting all over them, they were in their face, they had loads and loads of energy, but by the end of the last quarter of the game, Limerick kind of were showing their true self, and they finished so strong, so athletically, and they looked a fresh team. They looked like maybe they'd only played 20 minutes of a match in that last few minutes, whereas Tipperary, you could see that the tanks were empty, finding it hard to fill the spaces that they had earlier in the game, and maybe 7 points might be a bit tough on Tipperary, but in the end, Limerick did deserve the win, and as the game went on, they were getting stronger and stronger.
You might talk us through that first half, and even for parts of that second half, that Limerick performance. Why was it so scrappy today?
I think you have a couple of elements, and it's probably an old cliche, but I think Tipperary probably brought an intensity and maybe a level of activity around the field that we haven't seen in a little bit of time, and maybe Limerick haven't played against a Tipperary team like that over the last few years. So they were very mobile, they were very switched on and intense, and they got stuck into the Limerick guys' faces, and I think it was usually that role was reversed the last few years. So they did very, very well first half, but you could see with Limerick, they were a little bit off in terms of their striking. The amount of times we were looking up from here and a poor strike, a poor touch, a poor option. It happened multiple times in the first half, but as the game went on and the screw was turned and they got more comfortable again, there was very, very little poor striking, very little poor option taken, and they just kind of took over as the game went on.
As they were starting to take over, what players from that Limerick team for you were standing up more so that led to that Limerick dominance?
Well, I think second half you'd really see their full backline, especially Sean Finn and Mike Casey. They kind of look identical at times back there, small, strong men, but they seem to bring out ball after ball. Burns talk him into Declan Hannon. As their work rate upped and Tipperary got a little more tired, they were able to hold their position and attack ball after ball in the air. Now, I think something Tipperary will have to look at as well, the fact that they had such a diverse range of puckouts in the first half and had Limerick offset and wrong-footed, but second half it looked a bit obvious every time it was going to be launched long, but Limerick ate it up second half. And I think in the half hour line, Hegarty, while he wasn't on the score sheet a huge amount, he set up play after play, and he took punishment again. He gave punishment, but great performance by him. And I think bringing Flanagan in, again, he kind of showed his importance. He made that run out to the left wing a couple of times, that he's that outlet that will nearly always win the ball if it's a good one in. So for the last goal, that was obvious again. Hegarty, Flanagan into Byron, and we've heard that a few times over the years.
The former cornerback yourself, playing at the top level of the game, you mentioned Sean Finn there already. For me as well, a player that really stood out there right at the end. What sets this guy out from any other cornerback we've seen? Like he arguably is the best cornerback in the country, not just this year, but the past few years.
Oh, well, I think it's 4 All-Stars in a row now, so he kind of hands down probably the best in the country, and he plays on a great team. But he's one of the reasons they're great. He has a variety of physical assets before we go anywhere else that it's very hard to match, because he's low to the ground, but he's very, very strong. He's as probably strong a man as you'll see playing hurling. Apart from and you don't think a man as strong as that is going to be as pacey. So as fast as the guy as you're going to put in on him, he's still going to be getting there. And you rarely see a ball out the side, a perfect ball, where he's beaten by more than 2 or 3 yards to the ball. And then when his opponent has it a corner forward, he's always shoving him out the way. His feet are so good, he never gets wrong stepped. You never see a guy going in past him because his footwork is so good. And then I think he looks like he uses a 38-inch hurley, because we saw it there a couple of times during the match. The amount of blockdowns he gets in, and his timing and his reading of the game are second to none. So I don't know. And then that's before he even get his use to the ball, which is always top notch. So brilliant hurler.
What do you think John Kiely will be saying at full time to his Limerick team there after today's performance?
I think he has a nice mix to go back with, actually. I think he has a lot of things they can work on from that first half. I don't think he would have been one bit happy with what was going on at times in the first half. I think they were losing a lot of battles. I think they were doing a lot of silly things with the ball, poor execution, and that's not really what we associate with the Limerick team. So I think he'd be able to use that, be able to use the fact that Flanagan came on and did well, Boylan came on and did well. Reedy came on and did well as well, and he's going to shove him on that another bit. So I think it'll actually suit him, and there'll be no lack of motivation that he'll be able to push into his team over the next couple of weeks as they're trying to step up the gears for a Munster final and an All-Ireland. Because don't forget, a Munster final is important to Limerick people because they went a long time only winning the odd one every so often. So, they treat it with the highest respect.
Looking at the Tipperary performance there today, after what we saw the first game against Waterford, a lot of Tipperary supporters came away from that feeling confident, feeling right. We've taken a nice step here in the right direction. Then against Clare, there was a lot of deflation around the county coming into this game. Not a lot of supporters from Tipperary here today, just the hardcore fans. But after today, I think a bit of positivity back after seeing that performance. Your own thoughts?
Yeah, I think you'd have to have a little bit of hope. I think the Clare game, Tip were well beaten on the day. They were shown up by a team that was more up for it, way more organised. And I think if we look today now and say, well, there looked like no stone unturned for Tip, especially in that first half when they had a little more energy about them. I think once the energy went out of them in the last 15 minutes, they were hanging on in different areas. Even though there was only 3 points in it with 3 minutes to go, it was all Limerick in that fourth quarter. If we're being realistic, they seem to be in it a lot more. But I think you'd want to be very, very happy coming away in terms of that could have fallen apart today. Very, very easily fallen apart. A huge amount of young players, and maybe they learned from the Clare game. Okay, you can see the couple of scores, you can see the goal, but you have to keep your head, use the ball, and stay together. And I think the amount of times they were able to turn over a Limerick guy or keep after him, keep the hook. Kyle Hayes was going through there in the second half, and we think back to 2019 Munster final here. He ran through and he put a ball away, and it sent the Limerick into hysteria, and it kind of ended the game. But today they kept in there, they got a hook at the end, and it kept them in the match for a longer period of time. But we certainly saw leadership standing up. Dylan Quirke there around the middle of the field, Conor Stapleton showed an awful lot. I don't think they got enough ball into their full forward line. I think Mark Yo was starved. He got a great ball near the end and was unlucky not to get a goal. And I think if they're to look at it, they've dragged a lot of players out the field maybe to bunch it up in that first half, but we need a little bit more going up front. And maybe it's the personnel that we're missing, but you'd have to say the youth, the speed around the field was probably a bonus today.
You mentioned 2 lads there, Dylan Quirke and Conor Stapleton. Now, you might look Conor Stapleton in the forwards there. I don't think he scored today, but his overall performance there, his work rate, absolutely fantastic. You pointed him out there a few times during the game. And as you said, Dylan Quirke, but also J.R. Brown, especially in the first half, had a fantastic game. Those 3 players, newly on the scene, but great to see those lads standing up for Tipperary.
Great to see, and you have to have one of them games. I know, people say, well, you can't be celebrating too much, you lost today, but it's all stepping stones, and the likes of those players, and I think the likes of Conor played around the midfield, and the amount of times he got a hurley in and stopped, Limerick are a machine, and the puck out to the midfielder and the ball is handed off, and the amount of times he stopped at that source with the puck out, it really gave Tipperary a platform for, we'll say, the like of a J.R. Brown, who played very, very well, but they need a stepping stone. You can't just magically be a great player straight away when you get on the scene. Most players can't do that. But I think today they have something now. They had to go back to the drawing board again after the Clare game. They have something now. They have a few positives. Bring it back, and they'll have to push it on again. But this is, they'll have to work on an awful lot of stuff. And I think, over the next year or two, there'll be a few ups and a few downs. But they have an ability there. But it's to get it consistently as they go on.
And I suppose we're talking about the new players. We have to talk about one of the older heads, Nolan McGrath. Jason Ford not there today, taking the frees, who's been so reliable. Noel really stood up there today, though.
Yeah, and I think it's testament, and it shows his talent, because Noel wouldn't even take really frees for his club. Maybe his brother John would take him, and he hasn't really taken them for Tip over the years. And I suppose he was asked maybe last week would he step up to take him. So I'm sure he practiced for the week, but he was pretty unerring. He didn't miss any real obvious ones. And then, of course, with a lovely classy pint in the corner in the first half and a sideline in the second half. So he had all his tricks and things on display this Sunday. And look, he's still reeling in the years. I think it's very hard to look at Nolan McGrath as any different a player as he was 5, 6, 7 years ago. He'll always have the vision, he'll always have the skill, and look at another great performance from him. But he just needs, as we say, look at other Tip players, other young Tip players to come in and be dotted around him, and he can always be an asset to that group.
One of the key battles there today, Galan against Barish. Your thoughts on that battle?
I tell you, it was very, very entertaining. I think we had some great balls in. We had some balls won by both players. There might have been a bit of shoving and different things, extracurricular stuff going on as well. But I think it was all in good spirits. But I think when you get to that level of play, at Barrett against the Galan, both are gonna do well. And we saw Galan, at the end of it, got a goal. Carbon copy of his one in the first half. Catching him behind.
Can I just ask about that? The 2 goals he got were, as you said, carbon copies. Like for Limerick, do you keep him in there? And then as you as a corner back, how do you go about with dealing with him? Because he's such a dangerous threat, high ball, like he usually comes out on top.
Well, see, that's why he is dangerous. It's this double-edged sword. But I'll try and get out in front of him. But the Limerick guys out the field, they pass the ball and they'll see that and he'll sit in behind. And when you chip it up, he's one of those players that can do it. Like I think a lot of players in our time would have seen, or a lot of fans would have seen, Lar Corbett do that. Where you have him, you're out in front of him every time, but all of a sudden a high ball comes in. And they just have that ability. And special players, the TJ Reeds of this world, they have that special ability to do it. And that's the danger. And I suppose the only thing you do, and Cahill did it plenty of times, he was moving out in front, saw the ball was coming in high, and then backed up and tried to shove against him. But it won't work every time. And a player of Aaron Glan's excellence, all he needs is one little chance. And it was only a half chance to catch a ball back of the net. And that ended the game then.
For Tipperary now, their final game is against Cork, which it's looking like it's going to be a damn squid. And like for a Tip and Cork game, it's unusual to be going into that type of fixture with nothing there to play for. For Tipperary supporters there now, what do they need to look forward to? What do they, like again, Colin Bonner, he's came in, new manager, he's been dealt a really hard hand this year. Big players retiring, a lot of injuries, but what do Tipperary fans need to do? Do they need to ease off a bit and expect this transition to maybe go on a little bit longer than expected?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, I'd be talking to a good few. I would be one, and I'd be talking to them, and there would be talk and an understanding of that. I think because you're after losing a generation of player now, and you're doing accuse Seamus Callan that at the minute because he hasn't been able to play this year, this championship year. You're after losing a class of player that will be up there in any generation that was ever played in, and as good as played the game as any players in any county really. And now you're after losing 2 or 3 in a row, and include Bonner there 4 maybe in a row, and you're trying to nearly restart again. So I think the Tipperary Republic are fairly understanding. I think from the next Cork game, you're just looking for development, really, because that's, Tipperary people can't be talking about Munster finals, All-Ireland finals right now. If you get there, great bonus, but it's about getting a level of consistency and performance that then you can start challenging. And today, say, it's a good start. But again, the key now is against Cork the next day, where maybe Tipperary will be talked up a little bit more to say, God, they're improving, to actually come psychologically strong enough to put it up to Cork. And a 1-point victory over Cork will be a massive win at the end of the year, because I think if Cork or Tip end up with no win this year, I think it'll be really hard going into the winter.